Good morning, everybody. I am Lilly Code, and this is day 29. Are we on day 29? Of 100 days of code. So thank you for joining me. I'm losing track of the days now at this stage. We're only on day 29. Oh, when you're doing it every day, it's just sort of and recording it as well, so you haven't had time to reflect in a sense. Although I'm learning a lot. No, we're on day 30. We're on day 30. So let's get going. Yesterday we started this. Yesterday we started this application to make meals. So this is really exciting, you know. So we have our React meals, and then we have our cart up here, and we're going to be taking food orders on this. Now, we're not actually going to be sending through credit card permissions and all that, but we'll get the bare bones of this whole project set up. So this is the biggest project we've made so far, and we flew through this yesterday. So we got all this built, what you see on your screen now, in a matter of, the hour yesterday. Even forgetting how long I do these for the hour. So it's looking good, and I'm excited to continue with this. I just want to show you, make sure you can see the whole thing there, because it's nice, So yeah, there you go. You have your food, and you have your little text. So this is just a header, H2 if I'm not mistaken. Let's inspect it and find out. So if you right click and just go down to inspect, this will bring up the developer tools, which you can also get with Shift CTRL and I, or in Mac it's slightly differently. But if you come to this ... menu and go to your settings, and go down to more tools, developer tools, in there you'll be able to see what the shortcut is, because it does tell you there what the shortcut is. So it'll tell you on a Mac. And yeah, it's a H2 there. As you can see, it tells us here in our elements, which just describes the different tags or elements that are on this page. And then we have a paragraph and another paragraph, and then down here we've made these available meals, and the available meals are wrapped in an available meal component. Sorry guys, which is giving it this. There's a big bar in my head. One moment, I'll just fix that. Okay, so we're back. So I'm just going to continue on here, and all Max is doing now is using the meal item in this, using the meal item over in the available meals, which I've already done. So I'll just go ahead. And he's just passing in the ID. So I'll show you this in the available meals. It's the last thing we did yesterday. So here as we loop over each of the meals in the meal list, which is just from this dummy meal, so we have our dummy meals and we've assigned this the name meals list, and what this new variable contains is the array of dummy meals that have been mapped over, so we go over them one by one object at a time, meal by meal by meal is what I was trying to get out of my mouth. We go over them meal by meal by meal. So here we can see even the structure of this dummy meals. It's an array with these different things in it, so we have an ID, name, description and price. So these are all the different things that are contained in one single object, or one single meal, one single object within the array or within one single meal, as we have renamed each of these individual objects as we loop over them, map over them. And then with the map you want to take that item and do something with it and give out a different item at the end. So here what we're going to do is take each of those meals, which is just one of these objects with an ID, name, description and price, and we want to loop over it, and by looping over it we want to convert it to a meal item instead. So this is a bit mad like, but look, this is what we're going to do just so we can see what's going on there. So meal item, and for each meal item we have the name, which we're just going to get from this individual object which we have called meal. So it's going to be meal dot name. That's how you access a property within an object. You can use dot, or you can use the square brackets with a single quote, so, or a double quote. So but we're going to use the dot notation. This is the standard way of doing this. So we do meal for each individual object, and then dot the property of the object. So we want the name to be that particular meal dot name, the price to be that meal dot price. That shouldn't be there like that in capital. The description to be the meal dot description, and there we go, our descriptions have come back, and then we're just closing our tag. So for each of these meal items that we have, this is how we want it to display. So that's what we're doing there, you know. We're mapping a meal into one of these meal items instead, and giving it the different information that we want it to have. So up here we can see, here's the first object in the array, and the ID is M1. So we should pass through the ID as the key. It was given out that we don't have a unique key, so if we pass that ID, which is unique, as the key, well then now that will solve our problem. So we have name dot so we have meal dot name. So this will be given the name meal in that map function, right? And then when we do dot name, we're accessing this property. So the first name that we see will be and is sushi. So we can see that there. And then the second meal, when we come through the second iteration of the loop and we get the second object going around in that map, we get this second object here, and we can see not all that, just this. So we have the second object, and we can see in the second object, if we do dot name to access the property inside that object, and we've given this object the name of meal. So in each iteration, every single one of these is just a new instance of meal. Next time we'll be looking at this meal, next time we'll be looking at this meal. So when we do the dot, we're accessing the different things in here. So if we were to do dot name on the last object in this array, we would see that the name we get is green bowl. So that's how you can dynamically map out content, you know. You loop over it and you access the properties within that object. And then you can do something like this, have a dynamic list where, you know, when you first start learning coding, you're probably going to be learning putting static things on the page. That's probably one of the first things you do. So by static I mean, if I just made a little, say if this was HTML in here, right, so I'll just pretend this is HTML, and instead I did this, so I had a H2 and this was the meal title and this was sushi, and then I had the description, so then this is going to be P tag, and I'd add styling on this. So in HTML it will be class, but seeing as we're in React, well I said let's pretend we're in HTML, so let's pretend, so this will be class description, you know, and then you would have an associate description tag, and for this sushi you would have finest fish and veggies, and this will go in here. And then you'd have your price, and then you'd have to lay these out in a nice way. So you might use bootstrap, or you might use flex, or you might just use pure old CSS or SCSS. So that's sort of the static approach to doing this, which is great. You know, it works, it's really good, but you can get more functionality when you learn how to do the dynamic, and that just comes with time and practice. You know, as you keep practicing these things, that's the logical next step. You'll just find that as you go through the tutorials and stuff, you start getting introduced to these concepts. So don't worry if this is double Dutch to you, and if it isn't, then woohoo, like great. Great, you know, you already know this stuff, or you're learning it, so super. But this is just the next step up from building a static site, really, is learning how to dynamically display things, so that it doesn't matter if somebody changes the menu item, because whatever information is coming back from the back end or from the data, that will change. So yeah, as well, static and dynamic sites, it depends on what you need it for. You know, if you have a site that you know is never going to change, it's just informational, well then you don't need to be worrying about loops and all necessarily. You can probably do a lot of it in static code, and that's fine. But as you gain more and more experience, these things become easier to do, you know, and you just start to see the differences and how you can do them. So then this would be the price, so this would go like that. You know, and then you would arrange these three things by CSS or something. So there they are, you know, so they did pop up on the page. We see our H2 is already like larger, because that's comes with the H2. The H2 has built-in styling, but you shouldn't use the H1 to 6s purely for styling. They should be used to semantically lay out your page in a approachable way, in a way that makes sense. So you should have one H2 per page, just one heading, and then you have your H2s, and you can have many H2s, but within your H2 then the next logical heading should be a H3. So don't use these because, oh, that's the size I want, do you know? You can change the size of any of them with CSS, and that's the way you should look at the size. Those are for screen readers, and they're for people with accessibility that need accessibility built into the page, which every single website should consider. I'm still learning about it, so if I'm not, you know, saying here every single website should consider it, and then my test website hasn't even given it a wink. Well, we'll see. I think actually we are going to cover some accessibility in this course, which is great, because I'd love to know better how it ties in with React. But if you're building your own websites and they're going live, and even just practicing, look into accessibility, because if you try and add these things in later on, it's very difficult. Whereas if you just get into the motion of practicing it the same way you would with any of your other tags, it means everybody can use your websites. And from just a moral standpoint, it's not fair to leave anybody out. You know, you wouldn't like it if you were the person that couldn't browse the internet, or you couldn't access pages that you were interested in. So that's enough of a reason. But secondly, if you want to look at it from a financial perspective, if you're not going to cater to a whole bunch of people, well then there are loads of possible you know, buyers of your product that you've ignored if you're going to be selling a product. So it's just important for everybody really, and for inclusion, you know. So yes, have a look at accessibility and include it in your page. So I'll just continue here because I'm going, well no, I think that was an important side note. So I'm just listening to the project, as always, Max. Okay, cool. So now we're just getting our meal item form set up. So we're going to do this as we have flying through these yesterday and in this course. So we have a const, which is just, we're going to create a function declaration, and we call it the same thing that we've called the name of this file. So it's going to be meal item form, and then we will just create an empty arrow function here, and we can just say return, because I normally go down and do the other bit, but why not just stick that in, you know? So there's our return. Well, it's given out, maybe that's why it's a good idea to leave that to the end. And then export default and the name of this file again, and this just means this can be used elsewhere. So meal item form, there we go. Great. I sort of like excuse me, smiled internally when I did that, and I was like, yay. And then I was like, we've done this a few times. But still, take joy in your small, you know, in all of the small moments, because you're hanging around waiting for the big ones for too long. So, you know, enjoy small little things that bring you joy and just suck it in for a moment, you know. So this is going to be styles, as opposed to just thinking, oh, I'll just get back to work, like I shouldn't be silly. I didn't achieve much. I did achieve much, you know. So take those moments to say, yay, we got a component set up. So meal item form, we're going to just import this and .module.css, as this is the way we've been doing these. So you don't have to do your CSS like this. You can do it in different ways. So you could have it in the double quotes instead of within the object, but it's nice and clean, I find, when it's in the being imported in from a module.css file. So that's the approach we've taken in this course. Okay, so excuse me, so what's going to be in here is we have a form. So this is our meal item form, so we're just going to create a form. We've made a few forms as well during this 100 days so far. I've been explaining them as I've gone through them, you know, so I'll be sure to include form in the name of this video, and classes dot form. And then we have an input, and a button, and this button is just going to be to add something in there, and then we will close off our form. So that's okay, yep. And we'll just add, we have our classes, cool, and I called it styles. So that's why I can't find classes there, or why I can't find styles, I should say, but really I've named this the incorrect name. So now you can see that they're highlighted. Excusez-moi. Okay, so this is our meal item form, and in here we can see we have an input and a button, and it's very standard in React to create reusable components that you can use across the board, that you will be using commonly. So anything that you can sort of think, do you know what, I'm going to use something, this same thing in many other places, like for example the input. We can pull out that code, extrapolate it out and put it into its own component, so we can easily use it across the app instead of having to write a custom input component here where we feed it the exact information. We're going to make this dynamic in the same way that you've seen the static code of HTML, and then the difference between the dynamic React and just the different possibilities that gave you then. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll come down here to our UI folder and we will add a new file and call it input.js. So we made an input.js already in this series, so I presume it's going to be very similar, but you know, we're going to make one for this project. That was a different project. So we've already touched on 4 projects, I think, small ones, but still, you know, really great for learning. Max is the best. So we'll just copy this input.module.css file. That's the associated CSS that's going in this UI folder that for our created input.js. So I will paste, yep, cool. And then we're just going to set this up as always. So we declare a constant, we declare the name of our component input, we create an arrow function, this needs to equal, and then we open our curly parentheses and we return something and add in our brackets, and then we can export default and input. is the name of our file. So great. And then what we're going to do is, so for this one, oh of course, so for this one, because we definitely do want to use props coming in from outside, so when we have an input, we're going to want to tell it, well, what's the name of the input? What's the label of the input? What's the other things, like the name and the label really, and we'll see if anything else comes up here, but the name and the label, and then we also might want to pass in classes dynamically, so if you want to style them differently depending on where it's being passed in from. So for that then, rather than just having an empty function, we're going to pass in our props here. So we'll add that in, pass in props, and this is what we want to pass into this function now. And then we can get going on a return. So in here we'll have a div to start off with the class name, and I'll just equal this to our object, because first of all we need to import this particular file and give it a name that we can do the dot on all of these, some identifier, so that we can dot input and dot label, so we can access those different classes. So, and you could see there that all of the classes had the top level of input, so everything must be wrapped in something. So this div that has the class of input, because by having it like this input label, it's looking first for the class of input, and then within it it's looking for the label class. So back here we'll just import, we can give this any name we want, so I'll say classes from, and then it's going to be from the same folder, and we just say input, we put the whole name of the file, module.css, and then give our semicolon. And then in here, once we have our class name, we can use the object notation, put in classes for that keyword, and then do the dot, and we have our input, which is the name of the classes in that file. And just the dot input is this top level class, which is just going to give it a display of flex, align the items in the center, and put some margin on the bottom. And then when we continue on and have our label and our input, we will add the classes there, and then those classes will affect those particular items. So we'll close off our div here. There we go, that's our high level div. Then we want a label and an input, so we'll have a label and an input. And then in here we will have our class name, and this is going to be our class name of label. And within the label here, we want this particular text that's on the label. We don't want this to be static, to be set. We want it to come in from the props. So we'll pass in, when we use this in the props, which I'll show you us doing that now in a minute, we will pass in the label within the props. So we'll access it from props.label. And we'll also add a HTML4 on this particular label tag, and this will be props.input.id. And then in our input, so I'm just listening to what he's explaining now, because he's done something I haven't really seen before, and then I will do it and explain it. Oh, Max is so awesome and funny. He was just like naming this here, and he said, so this is the HTML4. He said, now this is my component, so I can name it as I'd like to. It is your component, Max. Yes, it is. He's just so funny. Guys, check out and follow some of Max's tutorials. He's really brilliant. I love him. So I'm still just listening, and then he's coming to this complex, not complex, but so he's just getting there now, and then I'll explain it. Oh, that's good. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so this actually makes perfect sense, because it didn't for a moment, and I had to rewind, and because like I was just typing along and I knew what was going on, so I could explain it. But then when you got to this bit, I was like, hold up, what is that? And now I understand. So first of all, we're just adding an ID property to this input, and this is going to be got from the props.input.id. So we're going to pass in the ID with the props, and it'll be on each individual input, so that makes sense. And then within this input tag, so this is a self-closing tag, so I'll just get rid of this tag here, and then also label should, yes, needs to be closed by a different tag, not a self-closing tag, because we want this props.label within the label, so that's perfect. So input is a self-closing tag. So far the only thing we've added is the ID, and we're getting the ID from props. And then we're just going to add these brackets here like this, and do props.input. And this is the spread operator. So this spreads out all of the items in an object or in an array. Let me just make sure it spreads them all in a object as well. So spread operator, array and object, or just array? Both. And iterable. Okay. Object string. Okay. Cool. So yes, it's an object or an array. So that's great. We use this a lot. This can be used a lot. It's very handy. So allows an iterable such as an array expression or a string. So even a string, yes, of course we can use it on a string, to be expanded in places where 0 or more arguments or elements are expected. An object expression to be expanded in places where 0 or more key value pairs are expected. So all this means is, right, look, if we have a look here at what's actually being spread. So yes, so see here we have a console log. I'll just zoom in, because this spread operator is great, it's very useful. So see the way we have console.log here, and we're console logging out the sum. So we are adding up different things here. Sum is just a built-in JavaScript keyword that you can use to add numbers. It's not related to the React framework or anything. We're on the developer, the Mozilla documents here. So this is related to JavaScript. It tells you everything got to do with JavaScript on this particular website. Excuse me, in a lot of my other videos where they would have been more tutorial based, I've pointed you guys to the Mozilla documents many times because they're very useful. So we have console.log, and then we're getting the sum. So this is just adding the numbers, and the numbers we want to add, excuse me. So yes, what this spread is doing, the ... is it's grabbing this array, and it's not looping over it, but it's just spreading it back out to its original form. So you have 1, 2, 3 going in there, you know. So whereas normally what you'd need to do is do numbers and then an open square bracket. So like, can I type in here? Yeah. So normally what you'd have to do is like this. So numbers to access the first item in the array, 0, add numbers 1. So this is how you access each of those items in the array. Add numbers 3. Or if you wanted to just do it with this sum property, you would wrap this in parentheses like this, and then you would do the sum operation on it, and then obviously rather than sum them in here, you just pass these in with a comma like this. So what the spread operator does is just spreads that array back out, and you can see all of the different items in there. So what it's actually doing is sum. So with the dot 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 numbers, this part here, this equates to 1, 2, 3. Because here is our numbers array. This is where I'm getting this information from. So we have an array called numbers with the information 1, 2, 3, and we used to have to, if we want to access that information, give the name of the array, and then you access it by the location in the array. So arrays are numbered 0. 0 is the first item, the first location in the array. Then you have 1, and then you have 2. My brain. So 0, 1, 2 is the array starts counting at 0. So even though these numbers are 1, 2, and 3, the position of number 1 is at index 0. So you would access, this is how you access the item at index 0. You pass it in with the square brackets, and you give the name of the array, whereas the spread does that for you. So it's very useful. So we'll just go back here. So you can use spread with loads of things: strings, arrays, objects. You know, we're doing hunky dory here. So what happens if you use it with a object? So what does happen is, in an object you will have a key value pair. Sometimes, you know, you can have whatever you want in an object. We seen back here in our meal items, or in our, we were looking at these already. So in our available meals, yes. So in our available meal here, if we hover over our meal, this is an object, and this doesn't have a key value. Well, it still does have many key value pairs. So this is our key ID, and our value is string, or is a string, sorry. So this will be ID, and then ID1, name, which is gone, we're expecting a string, so this will be name, kombucha, description, delicious drink, price, $2.99. You know, because this is expecting a number, this is expecting a string. 2.99 is a number. If we had a euro symbol in here, that's why we were parsing it, to get that symbol in there, because then it wouldn't be a number anymore, it will be containing a symbol, and it will be converted into a string. So this is expecting a number, string, string. So this is a key and a value. So you have the name of your key, and then the value, the name of your key, the value, the name of your key, the value. So that's how an object is set up. So then back here in our input, by doing this spread that we're seeing like this, so say for example if we had an object and we had type, an object had a type, and then it had a type of text like this. So this was our key and this was our value. When we do ... spread, that's just going to pop that in there. So that means that when we pass in our object, we will then get the property type and text on our input, which is very useful because it means we can change the type dynamically. We can add other information to the input, like if we pass in class name, class name, and give it a class name, that will also be spread out, you know. So this will be classes dot whatever, my class, and you could pass in a class name. You would need to cater for that. Classes, you know, so that means that this whole thing would be popped in here, and these are just being added on to your actual input tag. So that's what's going on there. Very useful. So we'll just get rid of all my random meanderings and go back to our spreading our props.input. So that's where we are there, and I'll get rid of this first line, so super duper, and we will continue on. Yeah, so we can even get rid of the ID if we want, because that should be passed in. Very good. Because that should be one of those things that we've passed in. And now we can actually use this. So back in our, said our, this sounded strange to my ears. So then back in our, now I'm conscious about who I'm saying our, oh my god. Is it the time? Am I talking about us? Who knows? Who knows? So then in here, in input, I just want to use our created input, our component, which starts with a capitalized letter. So we have that in there now. And it didn't automatically import it, so we'll just import it ourselves. And I leave the styles, they should either go at the top or at the very bottom. And the top, it doesn't seem like the right place for them, but if you put them at the bottom, then you're constantly going up a line to get to them, you know, whereas if you can just go bang 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 at the bottom. So at the very top will probably be good to just keep it organized a little bit, because it's a slightly different layout than just your importing of your components. But sure, look, we'll just continue here. Basically I'm just talking about my own preferences and which order should I put these particular component declarations and links to our style sheets. What order do I prefer? And the way Max has done it is he has put the component declaration above the style. So let's leave it the way Max has done it, which does seem like the better, like the more used approach, to be honest. And then UI, we'll just make sure it works both ways, because my argument is, if we keep adding in new component declarations, which these are the things you're most likely going to keep on adding, you're only going to have one of these, so that means you have to come in here to make sure that that one stays at the bottom, you know. Whereas if you just put that one at the very top, then you can just come in above your, I guess it makes no difference, I'm just being pernickety. So we'll get rid of that, and there we have imported our input, we've used our input. So let's go and see if that worked now. Oh, so we haven't actually used our meal item form anywhere yet. So far we just have our header here, we have our header, we have our button, we have our meal description, our meal summary, and then we have our available meals. So we don't have our meal form coming back out onto this page yet, so we'll do that soon. So yeah, so if we just quickly go back to our input and see what it is we're expecting. So we can see here props.input.ie, props.label. So we are expecting to be passed in a label via our props. So props, you can call this whatever you want, but props is a good name for it because it's what React calls it in their documentation. So that's why it's good to stick with that. So props is what's being passed in to this component and what we're going to use to fill out this component. So if we double click this, we can see what we're expecting. We're expecting a label and we're expecting an input, and the input should be an object. And this should be not like that. This should be like it is. So instead we want the ... just the spread operator there. So we're expecting an input for our props passed in with our props, and we're also expecting a label. And you can see here we have props.input and then dot something else, so input should be an object itself. So if we go back to our meal form, we need to pass these things in wherever we use the input because we're expecting them. So here we have label, and that's how we've set it up. We could have not included those things if we wanted to. So we'll just open and close our parentheses here, and I actually want quotes because I'm just passing in a string, and this will be amount is what I want to put here, and then also input, and this one will be an object, and first thing we'll have is an ID anyway, because we know we're looking for an ID, and we'll also have a type maybe. So I'll just see what Max does. Yeah, and we need okay, yeah, so he did add a type. So we want to add input, and the first brackets is telling it we want to use JSX code, and then the second one is saying, well, we want this JSX to be an object in this case. So we need the second set of brackets or curly parentheses to tell us it's an object, and the first one to tell us it is JSX. So we'll just do our dot dot and move over here and pass in our string. La la la. So I'll move this down just for ease of reading, and I'll move this down, and I'll tab these in to just do the old, you know, styling, and then I'll add in our bracket parenthesis or single quotes and a name. So the ID is going to be amount. Seems like a terrible ID, but we shall make that dynamic soon. And then the type will be number. So this is going to be a input box with the type of number. So great. And we also want to add a minimum, seeing as it's a number, and our minimum is going to be 1 and our max is going to be 5. So you can add a min max on type of number. So let's do that, and max 5. So cool. Oh. And we can also add, so he added a whole load of more stuff there. Okay. So we can also add a step value, which is how much we want to step. So for each of this min and max, what's the incremental value that we go up or down in? And we want to make the step 1. So just a full number here. If we go up or down, you know, we're not going to go to 0.1 or 0.2. We're going to just go up in a whole number increment. So that's how we're going to step up or down. And then our default value. So what do we want the default to be? And we will have a default of 1. So if you haven't selected anything, you've added 1 item into the cart. So all of that makes perfect sense. Good job, Max. Great as always. Love it, love it, love it. And I'm just going to clean this up a little bit for ease of reading, because you know, later on coming back to this component, we want this to be clear as day what's going on here. So our object is opened, and then we will list our various things here like so, and our default value, and we're missing a closing curly parentheses, and now everything looks like it's working. So that's great. And then this button should be on the same level as the input. We've just moved things in there for our own eyes. Oh, how did he get that there? Oh yeah, because we're actually using this input component. So where did he go and add this in? Sorry, excusez-moi. So I'm just watching here. So now he's filling out his input. And then where does he use the meal item form? Yeah. Okay, so Max seems to have some styling going on and a meal item form going on. So I'm just going to try and figure this out, right? So he has his meal item form over here. So that means in my meals, not my meal summary, in my available meals, it should be added here. So we want, yes, so these are our meals list, okay. And then within the same card, I think this is where to put it, we have our input. And I'll just sure I already, oh no, not our input, our meal form. So this should be our meal form, meal item form. For each item we have a form. So I'll just save that. Reload because it hadn't yet updated. So okay, we have something going on, but this still isn't where that should be. So where it should be is within this particular row. Okay, where, at what stage did he put his component in there? So I'm just going to go and have a quick look actually in the code, so we're not just running around for it. So I want the thing to be here, this new meal item form. So if I go to the code that he has added, so we did the header, we did the meals. Oh my god, we're flying through this as well. This is just amazing, like love it. So adding individual meal items, we've done that. Adding a form, this is where we are. So if we go to source, assets, we don't want our assets, components, and meals, available meals, I think we'll see. Okay, so here's our meal item, and then there's our meals list. So he hasn't added it in there. Meal summary, available meals. So I'm just going to go to the next one, because make sure that whatever it is I'm looking for is actually completed. So available meals. So he didn't add it into available meals anyway. Or meals. There's our meal summary. In our app.js, we just have meals. It's not in our header. It's not in our cart. So I don't know where he actually added this. Let's search for our let's search for our what is up with that word today for me? Our, like as in our collective, the thing that we've done together, because I really feel like you guys are here with me. So, and thank you, I appreciate it. It's great coding along and hoping that, you know, me figuring things out is really helping you figure things out, because it's certainly helping me figure things out. So here we are looking, so we have our input, that's fine, and then we're using this input in our meals form, meals item form. So then where are we using this meals item form, because I ain't sure. So if I just search for that and see where in our available meals, yeah, that makes the most sense, excuse me. Oh, that's my own code. Yeah, okay. So meal item form, okay. So number 6, yeah, where did he put it? Oh, So in our meal item, okay, that makes perfect sense. Yes, in this remaining div. Okay, of course, yes. So I was trying to get it to go in here, and I was trying to get it to go in at a level too high. So here's me trying to stick it into this row, and I was in a parent component, so I was too high, so I need to go down into the individual meal item, and that's where I'll be able to pop that in over here. So if we go back now, just close everything, let's close everything, close all, go back to our finder here, make sure we're in our own project 1, we'll just close up 5 and 6 so we're not getting confused, and we're here within our source folder. Let me just close all of the let me close all of the folders so we're not constantly looking at a load of open folders here. So we'll go into our meals, and then we will go into our available meals and take this out from here. This is not where this should be. That's why this was getting popped at the bottom, because we're showing each of our meals in a list. So meal, and then we have our meal item form below it. So this was not the correct place. We need to go into that meals list. And in order to go into that meals list, we go into our meal item, because that's what this meals list is comprised of. So if we go in here, now we can add in another div at this level, and from in here add in our meal item form. And now once we import this, this should be part of the meal item itself, which is how we want this to be. So now we'll import, and you'll see when this is done that it looks like what we're expecting. So class is from, and this is going to be from meal item form. Cool, awesome. No, we want to import meal item form from meal item form. Yep, cool. So if I save that, we still need to pass things in, I think. Meal item form is not defined. Yo, I defined it. So meal item form. Let me see. Okay. Okay, so yeah, that is all we should do. Whoop, whoop, whoop. I just needed to reload the page. Don't be a sage, or do be a sage. Sages are intelligent. So yes, great. So there you go. I just needed to reload the page. So now you can see our meal item within our individual meal, not our meal item, our meal item form within our meal. So this is an actual form that we can add. Why only 5? Maybe I want 50 sushi. Definitely. So 50 schnitzels for sure. So we can maybe increase that amount, because you know, people want more than 5 of these things. But you get the general concept there. We've created a form that we can increase and decrease in order to add in some. We'll just take one green bowl, bit of greens. You need the greens, love the greens, but love the sushi even more. I might order sushi for my lunch today after all that. I feel like I deserve it now. So great. You know, sometimes treat yourself. You're worth it, even if that treat means going on a little walk outside or listening to a song and dancing your ass off, because you know, you live once, and study hard and enjoy your time as well. So let's continue. Great. So that's awesome. I'm actually going to commit and push, because I think I forgot to push yesterday, and we've reached a really good point. I'm really happy with our progress on this particular project. I feel like I did this in 2 hours, like, so that is flying through it. That really is flying through it, if you were to ask me. Obviously, without having to think yourself of exactly how you want this project to come together and what components you might need. So, you know, without knowing that, then it's a lot easier, because Max has already done all that pre-thinking work prior to me starting this, so I'm just following along. But it's still a fantastic learning experience, I think, and I'm really getting a good feel for how compartmentalized React actually is. So he's compartmentalizing everything down, so that's a good learning curve. And also I've learned all about the hooks, and I've also learned about just loads. I feel like I'm really learning in this particular course. Just the way we're going through it, I'm finding it very, very useful, so I hope you are as well. And one thing that I will say about coding that I sort of am only starting to get to grips with and realise, but now I realise the absolute importance of it. So when I first started coding, I would just start coding and create a website, and I wouldn't necessarily have a vision in mind. I'd be like, because I didn't have even enough experience to think, well, what's my vision? I hadn't created or thought about enough projects yet. I just thought, oh, I really want to try and make a header. How does that work? I'll go and try and make a header. Great, I have a header on my page. Now what will I do? Maybe I'll add a big banner image, or just a big image, and then add a few items down below, like somewhat like a little shop or a portfolio page. So this does come with time, but I've realised now, and the penny dropped for me, the moment of realization came not actually through coding, but from seeing my dad work on and build things. So my dad is a carpenter by trade. He works with wood, and he was just building a small little set of shelves, but the way he works backwards, and he's also done other things, you know, so simple or large, where he starts from the end product, you know. He needs to know exactly how a job is going to finish before he cuts one piece of wood, puts his hand on one tool. He'll sit down and think about it and sketch it out, and it just all comes so naturally and so quick to him. But seeing him do it, I was like, Dad, like, do you already know how this is going to end? And he was like, of course I know. How would I be cutting the wood? Blah blah blah. Like, I know exactly, you know, I know exactly what's going to come at the end of this. And that was just, I was like, teach me your skill, teach me this thing, you know. And then I realized everything that you want to learn or everything you want to teach yourself is just practice. But I would love to just like shadow him someday and say, like, come on, let's build something, you know, and just to get the experience of building something. So I will do that, you know. Definitely have to. It's all skills are valuable regardless of what they are. Even if you're going to sit down and do some colouring at night, or read a book, or play a game of chess online, or the only thing that isn't really adding value to your life is social media, so cut that down and do some of the other things that you enjoy. Going on a walk, even just sitting down and doing nothing, that's important. So, but I think being stuck into a phone or TV, they're the only activities that sort of go against learning, in my own opinion, because you're not really resting, you're not really learning, you're just watching shite. So, you know, I don't know, that's my own personal opinion. And look, I still do it as well, but I really try and limit it. I've made a new commitment to myself, 30 days, absolutely no social media. Because when I started this channel, you know, you're checking, did somebody comment? Do I need to get back and say like, oh thanks? Do I need to get back and say anything? So you're sort of keeping an eye on it, like, in a sense. And then I was like, stop this right now, just put them up, and what will be will be. Like, who cares, do you know? Like, either people will watch you and they'll enjoy your videos, or they won't. Like, I'm doing this for myself and for yous to learn. I hope people do find me, and I hope people, more importantly, find it interesting, the people that find me, and helpful. But do I need to be checking if people have found it? Certainly not. That's just taking time away from my day, and time where I could be relaxing or reading a book or just doing something better than worrying about who's bloody looking at what, you know. So take the time for yourself. Now I feel like I have to order some sushi at lunch. There's a local Japanese I get a takeaway from. I get a bento box from there. It's only like €12, and which is really good for a takeaway in Ireland. That's a good price. Like, sometimes on a Chinese, if you're getting it delivered, you're looking at like 15 quid, 16 quid. Bento box, €12. That's a good price. I know it's different in every different economic area, but in Ireland that's decent, and it's just so good. Like, you get wontons in it, and you get the nicest rice, and it's just boiled rice, but it's cooked, you know, that sticky way, and it's just real sticky. And then you have chicken, and it's marinated. Oh my god, I think I have to get that. Although I have so many vegetables in the fridge, just gotta eat them vegetables, actually, now I'm thinking about it. Anyway, that's enough waffle for this evening, but just a bit of encouragement to be kind to yourself. Get out on a walk, limit the phone and screen time if you can, because, you know, that's just wiring and firing your brain, and you need that downtime as well. So have a lovely day, guys. I hope you go on a little walk, or enjoy an ice cream for yourself, or just something that brings you a bit of pleasure, just sitting in silence for a few moments, or lying down on the bed and sticking on a guided meditation or something, you know, just take a few moments for yourself. So thanks a million. I hope you enjoyed this video. We're flying through this meal ordering app, and I'll be continuing with this tomorrow. So thanks so much for joining me, and have an absolutely wonderful day. I'm going to commit this now offline. You've seen me doing that loads of times. So thanks a million, and adios amigos. Thanks.